50-something billion of expenses that the government have to come up with on an annual basis. That's what they're spending. And we're taking in about 35 billion. So we have a deficit there of somewhere in the region of 20. If that was a small business, and bring it down from billions to millions, bring it down to thousands, bring it down to a family income, and see would you be able to live off spending 20,000 or 200,000 more than you're taking in. It seems madness as such. And the major part of this, and one of the issues for small business, is where our taxes go and where it's being paid, and how the government actually, what they do with our taxes. Just again, over the first 8 years of this decade, just a quick run through figures where the government have actually allowed an increase of 7 billion in growth in the public sector pay, allowing 71,000 extra public servants, and increasing the salaries by 25% above CPI, which is above inflation. Just do a quick number of graphs just to show that. And that there's a public sector, if we paid at the rate of inflation increase, in 2000 the average wage in the public sector was about 31,000. If we paid at the rate of inflation, by 2008 those people would have gone up to 40,000. So that's what you'd expect. What actually happened is the actual average wage in the public sector went up to 50,500, an increase of 25.5%. So that's just on the people who were there in 2000. But of course, our government increased staff between 2000 and 2008 in the public sector by 71,800. So of course that brought up the overall price. So instead of paying, we were paying 9.5 billion in 2002 for the public sector, 9.5 billion. Then if you just paid at the rate of inflation, it would have gone up to 12 billion by 2008. But of course, we took on that extra 71,000, so it went up to 15 billion. And then, of course, the government paid an extra 25% to everybody over CPI to bring it up to the 19 billion. So that's an increase in the cost of just running the public sector. The cost in those 8 years has increased by 58.3%. And that's where our taxes are going. And the difficulty is, of course, now that they're talking about, cutting back in the public sector. It isn't cutting back on headcount, it's actually cutting back on services and keeping the headcount, which seems to be a little bit on the crazy side. And again, as I say, our state should favour small business and supplement private initiative. We are in grave danger, and I'll finish just on this point, if that's all right, John. Just the problem is that there is, it seems to be, governance is ineffective. There is a shortage of relevant experience in the cabinet, and the need for urgent and radical reform. I mean, that's, I suppose, goes without saying. But our cabinet and the government, have failed to respond effectively to the national crisis, and the government and the Oireachtas do not, in my opinion, and the opinion of many people that I would be speaking to around the country, don't command the confidence of the people at the moment. So why is that? And again, I go back to the Constitution that I mentioned earlier on. One of the reasons is that our Constitution results in well-intentioned but unproven people being entrusted with ministerial responsibilities, and excluding the two TDs that are here, and please don't take it personally, gentlemen. But unproven people are brought in without executive experience, are actually first of all elected and then brought into the cabinet without experience. So can we change that? As I say, our Constitution actually, that's the way it's formed. And what I would say is that we need a new system, a list system, something similar to what's right across the EU. In fact, our system of governance, the only other country in the world that actually uses the same system as ourselves is Malta. And all the new states that have come on board over the last 20-25 years, not one of them are using our system. So if we had a list system, we'd be able to get ministers from national talent pool, real experience and with real management skills, and would allow ministers free to focus on national governance. Because again, we know that ministers most of the time spend their time looking behind them to see who's coming up behind them and am I going to be re-elected. So the harsh decisions are not being made. I think we need to do that. And while I say we need maybe a change in our electoral system, the system we have actually allows for people through the Senate to be actually brought in on a type of list system. The recent death of Jim Doo, North Mercy on him, I mean, he was a perfect example where Gary Fitzgerald brought him in through the Senate. So I think we could actually do it. There are 11 nominees. And I think the time of, because somebody ran a bicycle business in Sandymount or sold steaks, mining steaks that you stick in the ground over in Connemara, that they have the experience to actually run a country. I think we need to change that, and it's time that we do that. Otherwise we will continue to get the same as we're already getting if you don't change. Just as a final focal score, that's the view, the US view of entrepreneurship, of a youngster selling lemonade. How can I convince my mum and dad to back my business? How can I convince Granny to share her secret lemonade recipe? What kind of stand will attract the most thirsty customers? Where's the best place to set up? And I need €300 for a new bike. So how much must I sell each glass of lemonade? That's the American way, children learning how to sell. I'm afraid the European way that we're starting to get, is it allowed for my mum and dad to back a minor to start a business? Does Granny have the legal rights to her lemonade recipe? What type of EU regulations do I need to comply with? Do I need a permit? Do I need to collect VAT and all the red tape that goes with it? Why can't I just sell? And I'm afraid that's probably one of the things that's happening in our country at the moment. So we're becoming too red tapish. And again, as I say, the state should and shall favour, and where necessary, supplement private initiative in industry and commerce. And that, as I say, in our constitution, and it should not be forgotten when you're out in the hustings, when you're talking to people, and when our TDs are talking in the Dáil. I think we really do need to remember the small and medium sector, and that we do need to be favoured. And it is over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a million, Mark, for that good opener. Next up, we've got Jim Power. Jim is Chief Economist with Friends First Group. He previously worked as Chief Economist